Where will the world be if every disagreement ended in bloodshed? If every opinion that offended us became a death sentence, what future would humanity have left? Well, these are the haunting questions at the heart of today's news, following the shocking assassination of American conservative activist Charlie Kirk. His killing is not just an attack on one man, but on the very principle of free speech, the cornerstone of any democratic society. Free expression has always invited debate, dissent, even discomfort. But it should never invite a bullet. To take offense at words and answer with violence is to unravel the fragile fabric that binds us together. How many voices must be silenced before the world realizes that disagreement does not equal destruction, and that tolerance is not weakness, but strength? Well, as we reflect on this tragedy today, we must ask ourselves, if ideas become punishable by death, can democracy itself survive? Welcome to the Flash News. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. Well, on September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk, the 31-year-old founder of Turning Point USA, was fatally shot while engaging students at Utah Valley University during his American comeback tour.
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Well, witnesses say he was answering questions about mass shootings and gun violence when a sniper's bullet struck him from a rooftop nearby on the neck. The attacker has not yet been identified, but the assassination is already being described as a political killing by Utah's Governor Spencer Cox and has shaken the entire nation. Well, let's take a look at the witness recounting these horrific incidents.
And then as the guy said shooting or shooters or something like that, you just hear the gunshot and I'm sorry, you just see his neck just like open up and there's just like so much blood that just came out.
As soon as the gun went off, we both hit the floor, started praying, everyone was screaming, and everybody started like running in like a mob through the doors, and like it was scary.
In my head, I was thinking, we got to get out of here. So I started yelling, we got to go, we got to go.
It's traumatizing. It's traumatizing for the students. When I saw students running off from the campus over the bridge there, a lot of them were crying. It was traumatizing for everyone.
Take your time, okay?
All I hear is screaming and I see people running and I'm like, it's not safe to run. It's not safe to get up. It's not. And all I'm saying is, please God, please God, please God, because I don't want to die. I don't want anybody else to die. And I think I just saw a guy die, you know?
And then, yeah, we got up and we just started running and we made it out.
I don't think this violence is justifiable, regardless of who's speaking, controversial or not.
This is a dark day for our state. It's a tragic day for our nation. I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination.
Well, the reaction has been immediate and emotional. President Donald Trump called the shooting a dark moment for America, describing Kirk as a tremendous person and a martyr for truth and freedom. Trump did not mince word, placing the blame squarely on what he called the radical left, accusing them of hating America and creating a toxic climate where voices like Kirk's are silenced by force. He also made a eulogy following the confirmation of Kirk's death in this video.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith, and we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven. Our prayers are with his wife, Erica, the two young, beloved children, and his entire family, who he loved more than anything in the world. We ask God to watch over them in this terrible hour of heartache and pain. This is a dark moment for America. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. Today, because of this heinous act, Charlie's voice has become bigger and grander than ever before, and it's not even close. May God bless his memory. May God watch over his family. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Oh, well, Candace Owens, who's also one of Kirk's closest allies in conservative commentary, took to X urging people to stop whatever they were doing and pray for him yesterday, just before he was confirmed dead, and she simply wrote, "I cannot process this." Elon Musk also weighed in, calling the assassination a cold-blooded murder and pointing at left-wing factions for breeding the type of hostility that could encourage such an act. Well, Charlie Kirk's rise in politics had always been a story of influence and controversy. In 2012, while still a teenager, he founded the TPUSA, Turning Point USA, with support from entrepreneur William Montgomery. By the time Donald Trump was running for president in 2016, Kirk and his organization had become the loudest student voice in favor of the Republican candidate. Kirk was addressed the Republican National Convention that year. He was one of those who addressed the Republican Nation Convention and chaired students for Trump. He later became part of the influential Council for National Policy, where conservative, religious, and political leaders networked with America's wealthiest donors. To supporters, Kirk was a patriot who stood unflinchingly for conservative and Christian values. To critics, he was a provocateur who spread misinformation, especially during the pandemic when his organization failed claims about the vaccine mandate. Yet whether admired or opposed, he was undeniably a voice who drew attention and shaped the political identity of young conservatives. His assassination now fits into a disturbing pattern of escalating political violence in the United States. Earlier this year, Donald Trump himself survived an assassination attempt during a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, when a gunman fired from a rooftop, killing one person and injuring others as Trump was grazed on the ear. Attacks on conservative justices and public officials have also multiplied since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Political violence is no longer unthinkable in America. It is becoming a daily routine, sadly. Well, Trump once said something. Let's take a listen.
I proudly created the White House Faith Office and a brand new DOJ task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. And there is anti-Christian. You don't hear about that very much, but there is anti-Christian bias. We're stopping the radical indoctrination in our schools and supporting school choice. And we're going to be moving our education department and various educational departments down to the states where they belong.
Well, listening to that, we cannot help but wonder, is this assassination fueled by politics or anti-Christian rhetorics, or even both? The motive for this killing is yet to be verified, even though suspicions hang heavily on mostly his political views and in other cases, his religious stand. It was evident in his discussion as questions about his beliefs were frequently asked, and he made that clear in different videos, one like this one.
Are you a Christian by any chance?
Very, very much so.
Like, why is that exactly?
Jesus saved my life. I'm a sinner, gave my life to Christ, most important decision I ever made.
So you believe the Bible is real?
Yes, I believe the Bible is true and real. Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I could give you the technical answer. There's never been archaeological discovery that has contradicted the truth of the Bible. And then, of course, the wisdom. There's not a truth of the Bible that if you apply to your life does not improve dramatically. And then finally, we have the most accurate and transparent, historically robust account that one can have of the most important figure ever to live in the history of the world, Jesus of Nazareth. And the resurrection is the pinpoint of my belief that Jesus did rise from the grave so that we may live.
What makes Christian mythology real?
So that's not mythology, but that is theology. If Genesis 1:1 and the resurrection is true, anything in the Bible is possible. You're looking at the greatest miracle. The greatest miracle is creation. And then the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. And I say, how do you know that Jesus rose from the dead? Well, show me another historical piece of a story where so many people willingly died a brutal death for a lie. Every single person around him had everything to lose, and yet they went to the absolute death, from Paul to Peter to the half-brother of James, saying that Jesus is Lord, Jesus rose from the dead. Not to mention, if you were going to fake a story, you would not use female witnesses in the ancient world. In the scriptures, it said that the women were the first one to see Jesus Christ. If you're trying to fake a story, you would never do that. Not to mention the 500 people that saw Jesus after he rose from the dead, and then the later church that lived under persecution under the belief that Jesus Christ.
Well, while both fans and those who knew Kirk mourn, the radical left seem to not try to hide the content of their heart after hearing the news, as this was their reaction. Let's take a listen.
I just watched a close-up video of Charlie Kirk getting pewed in the neck, so you know what time it is.
Got pewed in the throat, so that in his final moments he couldn't, in fact, speak. I think that's just poetic justice.
After hearing news like this, some form of memoriam is expected. So, in honor of his noble sacrifice, I am going to be getting absolutely blitzed tonight. Who's with me?
And even on the House floor on Wednesday, just before Charlie was confirmed dead, a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk erupted into a heated shouting match after a Republican lawmaker insisted on leading a spoken prayer for the conservative activist just before he was proclaimed dead. We see a blatant disregard for this request portrayed by the few who seem to not be in support of what Kirk Charlie stood for. Let's take a look.
The lady from Colorado Rise. Let's wait a minute. Wait a minute. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Shh. The House will be in order. We will join prayer right after this, okay? The chair lays before the House a communication.
Beyond politics, we see the broader epidemic of gun violence weighing heavily on the United States of America. Firearms are now the leading cause of death for children and adolescents in the United States. Mass shootings in schools, domestic murders, and everyday acts of gun violence claiming lives at an alarming rate. Children as young as 13 are now picking up firearms and carrying out mass killings, a tragic reality that underscores just how accessible guns remain in the United States. Families are slaughtered in their homes, churchgoers massacred during worship, people gunned down in nightclubs, supermarkets, and even at the ballpark. America has become a place where the freedom to bear arms collides violently with the freedom to simply take lives and the freedom to simply be alive. Ironically, Kirk himself once declared that it was worth it to endure some gun deaths each year in order to preserve the Second Amendment. Now his death by gunfire forces the country to confront that difficult calculation. Free speech must be protected and political differences should be debated passionately, but bullets must not replace ballots or dialogue. While Trump and his allies are right to call out the radical left for often being intolerant of opposing views, a balanced look at this crisis shows that the problem is not only political extremism, but also America's inability to control the flood of firearms that enables such tragedies. The United States stands at a crossroad. Spirited debate, even sharp disagreement, is the lifeblood of democracy. But when a conservative activist can be assassinated on a college campus, when a former president can nearly be killed at a rally, and when children continue to die in their classrooms, the signal is clear that violence has become normalized. Perhaps it is time for President Trump and other leaders across the political divide to reconsider the nation's gun laws, stronger background checks, stricter storage requirement, and limits on high-capacity weapons may not erase partisanship, but they could begin to stop the bloodshed, at least gradually. Charlie Kirk's assassination is not just another tragic headline. It is a warning that America's divisions are becoming deadly, that political violence and gun violence together are undermining both democracy and everyday safety. If nothing changes, more voices will be silenced, more families will be shattered, and more children buried. This is not the future Americans deserve, nor the one Kirk himself fought for. His death should be the moment the nation confronts its epidemic honestly, before it is too late. Well, President Donald Trump lashed out at the radical left after the shooting of Kirk, a powerful voice in conservative U.S. politics, and vowed to crack down on those responsible for what he described as a dark moment for America. He says, "My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it." Well, as we speak, a manhunt is still ongoing for the lone sniper who fatally shot the conservative activist Charlie Kirk while he spoke at university in Utah. And away from the United States, we see in Israel, that on September 9, 2025, Israel launched a bold airstrike in Doha, Qatar, in what it called Operation Summit of Fire, targeting a meeting of Hamas political leadership who were believed to be negotiating a United States brokered hostage ceasefire proposal. Israel's military declared that the gathering included key figures involved in overseeing operations since Hamas's October 7 attack in Israel, and said the strike was necessary to disrupt ongoing planning by those deemed responsible. While Hamas claimed its top negotiator survived, Israel maintains that the operation struck senior leaders. Among the dead were associates, bodyguards, and the son of a senior leader, and a Qatari security officer. Doha responded immediately, calling the strike a blatant violation of its sovereignty, a cowardly attack, and states terrorism, insisting that the targeting of a negotiation delegation undermines trust and jeopardizes chances for peace. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the operation, warning nations harboring leadership of groups that attack Israel that they will either expel them, bring them to justice, or face consequences. Israel framed the strike as a legitimate act of self-defense, pointing to the ongoing war with Hamas, the October 7 massacre of Israelis, and Israel's duty to protect its citizens. Netanyahu's office said the operation was a wholly independent Israeli operation. The strike unleashed a wave of global and regional reaction. Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani demanded accountability, condemning the attack as state terrorism, saying it killed any hope for the hostages still held in Gaza, and that such acts threaten the possibility of peace. Many other states, including Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Turkey, voiced strong opposition, decrying the strike as a violation of international law and an act that could destabilize the region further. The United Nations, EU actors, and several Western leaders expressed concerns that the attack in Doha might derail the very ceasefire effort it was meant to counter. Meanwhile, another story captured international attention: the release of Elizabeth Surkov, an Israeli-Russian academic who had been held in Iraq by the militia group Kataib Hezbollah for over 2.5 years. President Donald Trump announced her liberation, stating that she was tortured for many months and that her release was secured through sustained diplomatic and security pressure. She was transported from Iraq to the United States Embassy in Baghdad, then onward to Israel, where she was taken to Sheba Hospital in Ramat Gan. Following the same medical and psychological care protocol used for hostages freed from Gaza. Well, her university community, family, and the United States, as well as Israeli officials, praised the efforts that led to her return. Now, putting these events together, it reveals a pattern. Israel argues that it strikes even those that cross into sovereign territory when it believes high-value persons who lead or orchestrate attacks from abroad or operating are justified under its self-defense doctrine. The Doha strike, from Israel's perspective, was intended to strike a negotiating leadership that Israel contends are not merely political emissaries, but are actively involved in planning violent attacks. Critics call such strikes violations, claiming they endanger civilians, undermine international law, and jeopardize mediators' roles. Now, recent months have already seen high civilian tolls across Gaza from aerial bombardments, ground operations, and blockades. Humanitarian crises, including shortages of food, medical supplies, displacement, are severe, and many international actors continue to press for more aid corridors, ceasefire agreements, and protection of innocents. But for Israelis, every attack from Hamas since October 7th has reinforced the urgency to preempt threats even before they reach their soil. For Qatar and many other states, the emphasis is on upholding international norms, territorial sovereignty, and the protection of diplomatic spaces. In the midst of this conflict, global Reactions often seem contradictory, with some leaders who condemn Israel for striking in Doha relatively silent about other attacks by groups that operate from within civilian areas, or about the kidnappings and firing of rockets into indiscriminate zones. Some of the same international voices who demand Israel respect ceasefire talks also press for Israel to do more to protect civilians, but may not always acknowledge Israel's existential security arguments. Meanwhile, the release of Elizabeth Surkov shows what coordinated diplomacy and political pressure, and sometimes risk, can do for individuals caught in these broader geopolitical struggles. But then as the world protests the strikes in Doha, there is a question that many are asking, and one worth serious reflection. Is the world truly standing with the civilians of Gaza, or is it more aligned with protecting the political leadership of Hamas? In the final analysis, Israel asserts its actions are necessary to degrade the capability of Hamas's leadership, especially those who plan, finance, and authorize operations. But for peace to be credible, for trust, for mediators to be restored, for civilians on both sides to live in safety, political violence must be constrained, hostages returned, ceasefires respected, and the burden of protection shared. The road is narrow, the stakes high, and the world's moral consistency may be the necessary compass in this war between Israel and Hamas. On another front of wars around the globe, we see Russian forces launching what Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky described as a massive wave of strikes across Ukraine only on Wednesday, unleashing 415 drones and 40 cruise and ballistic missiles. Kyiv's air defenses destroyed more than 380 drones, including at least 250 Iranian-made Shaheds. Zelensky said while Russia's Ministry of Defense countered that it had intercepted 225 Ukrainian drones and a guided missile in the same 24-hour period. But the escalating drone war spilled across borders. Poland confirmed that fragments of a third drone were discovered in its province, one of its provinces, after Polish and NATO forces shot down suspected Russian drones that violated Polish airspace. The incursion drew sharp words from the United States President Donald Trump, who acts on Truth Social. What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go. Trump also spoke with Polish President Karol Nawrocki, while the United States ambassador to NATO declared Washington's readiness to defend every inch of NATO territory. Moscow dismissed Warsaw's claim as myth, insisting it had no plan to hit targets in Poland. But the breach rattled Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron called the incident unacceptable and said they confirmed Russia's escalatory stance. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk revealed that he had received proposals for strengthening his country's air defenses from allies including France, Germany, the UK, and NATO. While the war continues to exact a human cost, Russia's TASS reported that a man injured in a Ukrainian drone strike in the Kherson region later died in the hospital. And the question only looms larger than ever. How long can this cycle of drone wars and cross-border escalations continue before triggering a wider NATO-Russia confrontation? While military support to Ukraine is already expanding, Canada announced the delivery of 8 armored combat support vehicles to Poland for onward transfer to Ukrainian forces, while the United Kingdom pledged to mass-produce Ukrainian-designed interceptor drones to help Kyiv counter Russian missiles. On the economic front, sanctions remain a key weapon. Zelensky said European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had briefed him on new joint measures with the United States to strengthen restrictions on Moscow. And in Washington, Congressman Joe Wilson introduced the bill to reimpose Soviet-era trade curbs following the drone strikes on Poland. Brussels is also weighing whether to include certain independent Chinese oil refineries in its upcoming 19th sanctions package, which could be unveiled as soon as Friday. Now, as the skies over Ukraine and Poland grow more dangerous, Western Capitals face an urgent choice whether to escalate their military support further or risk leaving Russia's intensifying drones and missile campaign unanswered. And with the moves of different EU members, we already get the answer to that. But then South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung has sharply criticized the United States after a sweeping immigration raid at the Hyundai-LG battery plant construction site in Elabelle, Georgia. The raid, one of the largest in the United States history, saw nearly 475 workers detained, more than 300 of them South Korean nationals. Most of those arrested were specialist technicians employed by subcontractors to install and calibrate advanced equipment. But the United States authorities said many were working on visas that did not permit labor or had overstayed their permit. Lee called the operation bewildering, suggesting that it exposed deep cultural differences in how immigration issues are viewed. In South Korea, he noted minor visa violations such as foreigners teaching English while on tourist visas are rarely seen as serious crimes. He warned the raid could have a chilling effect on future Korean investments in the United States, questioning whether companies can justify the risk of building plants under such conditions. Schroll arranged a charter flight to bring most detainees home, rejecting United States' proposal to deport them in handcuffs, though one South Korean worker chose to remain there. The fallout has rattled the $7.6 billion Hyundai-LG project, one of the largest foreign green energy investments in the United States, and prompted Schroll to push for clearer visa categories that account for the temporary, high-skilled work foreign experts provide in global supply chains. President Donald Trump defended the raid, saying America welcomes investment, but foreign firms must respect immigration law, while hinting at possible exceptions for technical trainers who are essential to United States manufacturing. But then the diplomatic rift over Korean workers is unfolding just as Washington faces friction with African partners over deportation policy. In Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama confirmed his government had agreed to receive West Africans deported from the United States, citing ECOWAS's free movement rules. The first group of 14, including Nigerians and Gambians, has already arrived in Accra, where authorities are facilitating their onward journeys to home countries. By contrast, Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuga has flatly rejected the United States' pressure to accept Venezuelan deportees, many of them former prisoners. Tuga said Nigeria already has enough problems and cannot shoulder responsibility for another nation's convict, stressing that with a population of over 230 million people, adding third country deportees would be unmanageable. His remarks underline Abuja's determination to resist being drawn into the United States enforcement strategies that shift burdens onto African states. Together, the three episodes, the South Korea raid, Ghana's acceptance of deportees, and Nigeria's rejection of Venezuela, illustrates the sharp edge of America's evolving immigration policy. And for allies investing heavily in the United States industries, sudden enforcement action risks undermining trust. For African states, the deportation pressure raises questions of fairness and capacity. The wider challenge for Washington is how to balance strict immigration control with the realities of global interdependence. Now, securing foreign investment, respecting partners' sovereignty, and ensuring human rights protections for those caught in the middle. But then how can the United States strictly enforce immigration laws while still maintaining itself as the world's most attractive destination for investment, talent, and labor? Are these immigration policies getting too far as it is the question. But with that, we've come to the end of today's Flash News on Undaunted. Coming up next at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. is Undaunted News. To stay tuned for that, and thank you for joining us today.